I exposed my cheating wife's affair, took control of my life, and left her to lose everything for good. Hey Reddit. I always thought my marriage was solid. My wife, Amanda, and I had been together for 10 years. We shared laughter, dreams, and a future, or so I thought. I didn't know that while I was working overtime to provide for us, Amanda was sneaking around behind my back. What hurt the most wasn't the betrayal itself, but the cold realization that she'd been living a double life for months without me suspecting a thing. The first clue came when her behavior changed. She suddenly became obsessed with her phone, always angling it away from me and laughing at messages she refused to explain. Date nights became rare, and when we did go out, she seemed distracted, always checking her watch or texting someone under the table. When I asked her about it, she brushed me off, saying it was work stress or chats with her friends. I wanted to believe her, but something felt off. One night, I stayed late at work. When I got home, I noticed her car wasn't in the driveway. It was strange because she hadn't mentioned going out. I called her, and she answered after a few rings, sounding breathless. She claimed she was out with her best friend, Lisa. I didn't question it then, but the seed of doubt had been planted. The turning point came 2 weeks later when I decided to dig deeper. I installed a GPS tracker on her car. I hated the idea of invading her privacy, but I needed answers. The next day, she told me she was heading to Lisa's place again. I checked the tracker, and to my shock, her car was parked outside a cheap motel across town. My stomach churned as I stared at the screen, unable to believe what I was seeing. I didn't confront her right away. Instead, I gathered evidence. Over the next few weeks, I documented her movements, took pictures of her car outside the motel, and even hired a private investigator to confirm my suspicions. The pie delivered the final blow, a series of photos showing Amanda with a man I didn't recognize. They looked cozy, laughing and holding hands like a couple in love. The betrayal burned, but I didn't let it consume me. I knew I had to act carefully. I started planning my next steps, determined to regain control of my life and expose her lies. First, I met with a lawyer to discuss my options. Thankfully, we didn't have kids, so the divorce process would be cleaner, but I wanted to ensure I came out of this with as little damage as possible. Then, I started separating our finances. I transferred half of the savings into an account under my name and canceled the joint credit cards. I also began discreetly packing my belongings and moving them to a storage unit. I didn't want her to notice anything until I was ready to drop the hammer. The day of reckoning arrived. I waited until Amanda left for one of her so-called meetups with Lisa. I went through her phone while she was in the shower earlier that day, taking screenshots of incriminating texts and photos. It was painful to see how she gushed over this man, calling him the love of her life while treating me like an afterthought. But I knew it would all be worth it when the truth came out. That evening, I invited her parents, her siblings, and a few close friends to our house for what I told them was a special announcement. Amanda was confused when she came home and saw everyone gathered in the living room. She asked me what was going on, but I just smiled and told her to sit down. I stood in front of everyone and began to speak. I talked about how much I loved Amanda and how I thought we had a happy marriage. Then, I revealed the truth. I showed the photos, the GPS logs, and the texts. Her family looked horrified, while Amanda's face turned pale. She tried to deny it at first, but the evidence was undeniable. Her father, a proud and traditional man, looked at her with disgust. Her mother broke down in tears, unable to comprehend how her daughter could do something so cruel. Amanda tried to plead with me, claiming it was a mistake and begging for forgiveness. But I stood my ground. I told her I had already filed for divorce and that I wanted her out of the house by the end of the week. I also informed her that I had spoken to our landlord and arranged to have my name removed from the lease. The house was hers now, along with the bills that came with it. I had no intention of making this easy for her. Her affair partner, as it turned out, wasn't some wealthy Prince Charming. He was a broke loser who lived with his parents and worked a dead-end job. When Amanda tried to turn to him after our confrontation, he ghosted her, leaving her to deal with the fallout alone. The weeks that followed were chaotic. Amanda tried to reach out to me multiple times, leaving tearful voicemails and sending long emails begging for a second chance. I ignored every single one. I blocked her number, deleted her from social media, and focused on rebuilding my life. Her family disowned her, refusing to have anything to do with her after what she did. She lost most of her friends, who sided with me after learning the truth. Financially, she was struggling too. Without my income, she couldn't keep up with the rent or her lavish lifestyle. She ended up moving into a tiny apartment in a sketchy part of town. As for me, life improved dramatically. I moved to a new city, started a better job, and met people who valued and respected me. I even began dating again, cautiously but optimistically. It wasn't easy to trust after what happened, but I refused to let Amanda's betrayal define me. Looking back, exposing her affair was one of the hardest things I've ever done, but it was also the most liberating. She thought she could manipulate and deceive me without consequence, but in the end, she lost everything. Meanwhile, I gained my freedom, my dignity, and a fresh start. I'm sharing this story not out of bitterness, but to remind others that you don't have to accept betrayal. Sometimes, taking control of your life means making painful choices, but those choices can lead to a brighter future. For anyone going through a similar situation, know this: you deserve better. Don't let anyone dim your worth.